Okay, so hello everyone, and I welcome you all today to our today's live podcast, the next experiment by the SciComm Synapse, and I'll be the host and event manager. The SciComm Synapse, a podcast featuring researchers and scientists, and I'm delighted to welcome our honorable guest and speaker, and we'll be in conversation with Sanatan Dutta, an award-winning science and educator on science as storytelling. But before we begin, I would like to introduce SciComm Synapse. The SciComm Synapse is a science communication enterprise registered as an MSME under the Government of India. Its mission is to bridge the gap between the scientific research and society by transforming complex scientific ideas into accessible and engaging content. Through curated events, interactive workshops, and meaningful discussions, the organization promotes awareness and understanding of science amongst diverse audiences. It also nurtures a collaborative STEM ecosystem where students, researchers, and enthusiasts can connect, exchange ideas, and grow together. So, I would be happy to introduce our today's guest and speaker, Sanatan Dutta. Sanatan Dutta is Assistant Professor of Practice at the Center of Writing and Pedagogy, Trier University, and an independent journalist covering science, health, environment, gender, sexuality, and caste. They are also associated with the LEFPIC Science Media Forum, a multimedia science collective, and Queerbit, an India-based media platform publishing definitive stories on the lives of queer and transgender people in South Asia. Their work has been supported by grants from the National Association of Science Writers, USA, the UK Research Initiatives Transforming Education for Sustainable Futures Fund, the Reframe Institute of Arts and Expression, and the Foundation for Advancement of Science and Technology India. They have bylines in several national and international media platforms, including Queerbit, The Hindu, The Life of Science, Hindustan Times, the News Minute 52, The Times of India, The Wire, LGBTQ Nation, and The Scientific American. For their work on gender segregated house in India's science institutions, they, they were awarded the 13th Ladli Media and Advertisement Award. Their
मेरे बाकी
children's,
भी तो है
their children's book have been twice listed in Tata Trust's Parad's Honor List 2023 and 2024. Please join me in warmly welcoming welcoming Sanatan Dutta. Thank you, sir. So, if you grant me, then we can go towards the question and answers for today's podcast.
Sure, happy to answer questions. Thank you very much for inviting me and for that very kind introduction. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So it will be from my end and with you. So when you were starting out, did you always imagine your career looking like this? Like what moments helped you realize academia would shape in your own way?
I think I'm getting some background noise. I don't think it's from my end, but no worries. Thank you for that question. So, no, when I was starting out, I was not imagining my career to look like this. In fact, until say about 2020, I wanted to be a neuroscientist. I was enrolled in a doctoral program in developmental neurobiology. But I think I was, but I think during that time there were several instances that kind of both solidified the idea that I did not want to do laboratory work, but at the same time I wanted to be associated with the sciences. So for example, I think in 2020, uh, the government put out this policy, which is the Draft Science Technology Innovation Policy, that had a lot of focus on science outreach, and it saw science communication as an integral part of the Indian science ecosystem. This was also the time when many institutions in the country were instating uh, what we call science communication officers, or people in charge of uh, handling how the institute's work reaches a larger audience. So so I think that was one of the moments that made me think that I'd like to do some kind of work around science writing, science communication. um, that time also coincided with the COVID-19 pandemic. If you remember, I think 2020 was the first lockdown, and it continued. The last lockdown ended in 2022. So the time that I entered my PhD coincided with the moment when my lab was shut. Shut in the sense it was running at a baseline mode. We were not going to the lab every day, which gave me some time to explore my other interests. So I joined the Lab Hopping Science Media Forum, where I'm still associated as the project coordinator for one of their publishing seasons. Um, the Lab Hopping Science Media Forum was back then focusing on telling stories of women and their science, women in India, and their contributions to the Indian science ecosystem, the kind of challenges that they faced. So I started working with them, and one of the things that I could figure out is how to expand the ambit of who is doing science. So that is the first time that I started looking at transgender people in the Indian science ecosystem, and it expanded um, its scope from there. So since then, I've covered a vast range of things. In terms of journalism, I started by looking at research misconduct in the science ecosystem. But now I cover both scientific discoveries, but my focus has always remained in looking at who is doing science in India, what enables the production of certain scientific ideas, and how who is doing science changes the science that is done. So yeah, since then I've basically been looking at telling stories of science and scientists and people who could not be scientists for whatever reasons uh, to the larger world. Thanks. Sorry, I don't know if I gave a very long answer,
No,
but I
no,
hope
no,
it's
no.
a
That
good
that
starting
was
point.
absolutely amazing, and it was really short as well as insightful explanation. So I think it's a powerful reflection on your journey, right? So building on that.
Thank you.
Next question. Many students feel pressured to choose between serious research and creative work. Have you ever faced that tension, and how did you respond to that?
Uh, so I think one of the reasons why we keep feeling, that I mean, when we say serious research and creative work, we are automatically saying that creative work is not serious. And I think the reason why we feel that is because we are conditioned to think that only what we've seen and what we've been taught as doing science is the only legitimate image of doing science. All other contributions are peripheral, right? So I think for me, it's that distinction has not been so strong anyway. Like even when I was doing biology, um, I think biology was one of the most what do you say, creative sciences in that sense, because I was looking at images of stuff under the microscope and constantly feeling how beautiful that is, even before I could start figuring out whether what is it those images are telling me in terms of a biological process. I think the real excitement often started by looking at something and figuring out, okay, this is a pretty image, this is a beautiful image. And then those who are biologists on this call might know that, when you collect images from confocal microscopes and or stuff like that, then you have to go put some pseudo colors on it so that you can figure out whether things are together, things are not together, where are they located. And I was playing a lot with that. So anyway, I think even when I was a scientist, I was doing a lot of creative work. I don't think, at least in biology, and I'm pretty sure it's true for other sciences as well, that science can exist outside creativity. Uh, but on the but yeah, I understand the concern that when one tries to leave that conditioned path, it becomes a more interesting space. You do feel that, okay, is my work not going to be taken as seriously? I must say that happens sometimes. I think a lot of scientists think that science journalists and communicators are doing something that happens after the science is done, and something that is a translation project. So therefore, you translate something that is technical to something that is non-technical, and therefore it's not as serious or important as doing science itself. Um, it's just that I don't think that's true. I think a lot of public image of institutions relies on the kind of work that science communicators and journalists are doing. I think it is imperative for institutions because so much of science is publicly funded. At least in India, a majority of science happens because the taxpayer money funds the scientists and the laboratories. That people have the right to know what is happening in these labs, and how their money is being utilized and how science can benefit them. And I think scientists have a, a a mandatory mission to make more people interested in what's happening in the scientific ecosystem, to take accountability and responsibility as well. And I think science journalists and communicators do that important job of bridging, what we think is the science ecosystem to the larger society. So for me, at least, it is a very serious job, and it is something that requires a very specific set of skills that actually the science training does not always prepare you for. So for me, that distinction between serious and creative work actually has blurred quite a bit. And I think the kind of work that science communicators and journalists are doing is serious and creative, much like how science is serious and creative. I think all scientists would agree that what they do every day in their laboratories is a project in creativity as well. So I would just urge the audience who's listening to sort of think more critically about what counts as serious work and what counts as creative work, and why is serious and creative against each other. I think serious work is creative work. One can think about the question of good science, bad science, good science journalism versus bad science journalism. We can talk more about it, but I think science and science journalism, or science and science communication, are both serious and creative projects.
That actually touched us.
Sorry, I
And
can't hear you. I don't know if it's just. Yeah,
so
maybe I
am
can
I
hear you
audible?
now.
Yeah. Okay. So I think that is something that you really touched on, something that's really important there. So that's the idea of choice and pressure that brings to me. Thank you for the wonderful explanation. Next question. If someone loves science but also loves writing, storytelling, or social issues, what you would tell them about combining those passions?
Uh, I would say that I think part of the reason why, I mean, I've spoken to several science communicators and journalists, and one thing that we've all realized is that even for those of us who are more known for stories that, so to say, criticize or critique the science ecosystem, like I've done a lot of work on research misconduct, casteism in Indian science, the kind of exclusions that shape Indian science ecosystem. Um, even all of us who write about science for the larger public, I think we all do that because we really like science. You know, I think I think I am a science journalist because given an opportunity to do journalism about anything else, I think I would still choose science as my beat. It's just very interesting and quite exciting to be able to write about science for the larger world. So, so I would say to people who are looking to combine their interest in science and their interest in writing, to try their hands at science communication. I think science journalism might be something that calls upon another set of skills, but I think there is enough um, opportunity, at least in India right now, to do science communication without having to quit science practice. So I would ask them to try and see whether they would like to, uh, start writing small blogs or explainers about stuff that is happening, contemporary discoveries in the discipline that they're working with. Is there a way to scale up some of the writing that they are doing so that it can be put out uh, to the world for people to engage with? Of course, I'm talking only about writing. There are other ways of doing science communication, including podcast, art. I know that there are people who use dance as a platform for science communication and theater as a platform for science communication. And I think that is the strength of um, science as a discipline. That what we are learning to realize from science communication practice is that whatever be the mode of communication that you're interested in, or the kind of content that you like to produce or consume, science seems to you know fit into that modality, that genre, without a lot of difficulty. So really, I think the thing stopping us is from starting. I think it just needs to. I think one needs to start somewhere, and things should start falling in place after that. Yeah.
So that's a really wonderful explanation. I mean, I love how you spoke about balancing different interests on a similar note.
Yeah.
So that's absolutely amazing. You work across, those students. I would exactly say that for students who are scared that public writing or journalism might make them seem less academic, what reassurance would you offer to them?
Um, I would I would ask them, for one, are they writing publicly even while they are continuing their science practice? So, for example, Carl Sagan is a name that people keep quoting. He wrote this book called Cosmos that, for many of us, was perhaps uh, the first piece of well-written science communication that we encountered. And Carl Sagan was one of the most famous astrophysicists or cosmologists of his time. And a lot of very serious researchers um, do spend a lot of time speaking to the public about their work, because I think public interest in science is something that we need to be able to maintain for science to be something that can continue progressing. Science does not exist out of society. We don't. It is very hard to do science in a society that is anti-science. Um, so in that sense, I think a lot of very serious researchers, some of the top names of their fields, have actually spent a lot of time, writing publicly, doing a lot of work for the Indian science ecosystem. Sorry, for the science ecosystem overall. Um, but of course, the thing is that once you become somebody like Carl Sagan, then it becomes easier to do that work because nobody can come and challenge you that you are not a serious individual anymore. Um, but again, the suggestion is to start early and keep honing that skill so that uh, so that you don't have to wait to be Carl Sagan in order to start communicating science to the larger audience. One worry is that if we wait till somebody becomes somebody like Carl Sagan to start talking to the public, the worry is that not all of us will become Carl Sagan. Most of us will not. Most of us will be what we call everyday scientists. Science is a part of our. There are many scientists in the world, and we'll be everyday scientists doing some exciting things, but not celebrities, so to say. And once you become somebody of that stature, then starting to pick on new skills of science communication become much harder. So I think it's a good idea to practice as starting that journey as soon as possible. Of course, how does one handle criticism about not being uh, yeah, like not being seen as a serious researcher? I would think that as you keep doing your science, and if the science is of a certain standard, I think it's kind of hard for people to sort of decry that entirely. I think at least in the world that we live in today, being able to speak to the public is only seen as a good skill. I don't think it is necessary that it's seen as a compromise from the rigor of science. And for that matter, there are many reasons for us to believe that speaking to the public actually improves scientific rigor. So I just say that criticism, I think one should not be bothered by it so much. Um, of course, then I was talking about people who are simultaneously doing science and SciComm. There are people like me who've quit the science, at least active science practice in order to do science communication. And I think even for us, there is this transition period where you are doing some science while you're in a laboratory, and then you start exploring these other options on the side, and one of those options works out, it clicks, and then you're able to quit this and move to SciComm full time. I think even then, basically, that does not happen. That okay, I'll now quit my science job and I'm going to start taking up my SciComm job, given that there is no pathways to SciComm, no clear pathways in the country yet. There's no degrees that you can do in India uh, that gives you, let's say, MSc in SciComm, something that is available in many universities in the UK. Um, I think that transition period is always going to be there, and that only means people have to start foraying into some of this while they are still practicing science.
So absolutely, that was incredibly amazing answer. So I think many students really resonate with that fear, taking that forward. And heading to the next question, you work across, science, gender, sexuality, caste, and environment. How can young scholars learn to embrace all parts of their identity instead of compartmentalizing themselves?
Uh, I think one of the things that I'm learning to realize is that it's kind of hard, very hard on the person, but also very hard as a process to sort of sit and compartmentalize. I think it's not, uh, you know, we do bring ourselves into our workplaces and into our everyday lives. And of course, some aspects of our identity might be more relevant to a certain setting. But I don't know if in heightening that part of our identity, it's easy for us to neglect the rest. I don't think that's how we work as individuals. Um, so I would like to think about what different parts of our identity can communicate and help each other. So for example, um, I can say that okay, I am, because I'm a queer individual, I have a certain view of science that shapes the kind of science that I want to read, that I want to cover, that I want to pay more attention to, and the kind of potential that I see in science. Um, we know in many different scientific fields that certain social, cultural, or political identities that scientists come with have shaped the science that they have done. And I mean, this should not come as a surprise. So much of scientific discovery in the 20th century was a consequence of either the First or the Second World Wars. We know that um, many models of imagining about phenomena. For example, the danger non-danger model of immunology, that is right now the most well accepted model of immunology, actually comes from the work of a woman, Polly Matzinger, who was an immigrant and who was uncomfortable with the idea of self non-self mode of recognition. So clearly, people's social, cultural, political identities affect their outlook into the world and outlook of science itself, and therefore shapes the kind of science that they're able to do. So I think instead of trying to compartmentalize what one should be focusing on, perhaps, I don't know, I mean, I don't want to say should be, but one could focus on, is think about how one aspect of their identity actually shapes another. So, how being a queer person shapes a certain standpoint, a certain vision about what science should be, what science can do, what are the gaps in the current scientific discourse, and so, yeah, I think I would just think that is a more helpful way of participating in an ecosystem, is to also think yourself as an ecosystem where multiple identities exist in relations with each other, um, and create this whole. Yeah.
So that's just amazing. I think that connects beautifully to the identity and how we show up in our work. So that's interesting. Um, your career includes training, journalism, grants, collectives, and children's book. How can students start exploring multiple pathways without feeling overwhelmed?
Yeah, this is a great question. Uh, I think so it would of course depend on the kind of pathways that people are trying to explore. I can talk about, let's say, science communication and communication. So let's say you're a doctoral student who's trying to also explore science communication in India. One way to start would be to start with platforms that are beginner friendly. I know that many institutions have institutional blogs, right? So there are blogs that are anchored to the institution. Most science institutions that I can think of will have some kind of platform on their website for people to come and take a look at, to get a sense of what is the work that's happening there. And that might be one of the safe places to start for somebody who's looking to just practice science communication, because there would be a science communication officer, a science communicator in the institute who's probably anchoring that platform. They can mentor students who are interested in taking that kind of work forward. And of course, then there are platforms that are not attached to institutions but are very beginner friendly, right? So SciDO, for example, has a blog uh, where I think, which I think is quite beginner friendly in terms of the mentorship that they provide, in terms of the time and energy that they're willing to spend in training people. So that would be one possibility to, if one is trying to be a science writer, to start there. Nothing is stopping individuals from starting their own blog where they are able to respond to certain scientific discoveries as they happen. That might be another way of starting. Basically, the idea is to build the communication muscle in oneself, and um, build a portfolio of activities or write-ups or content that they've been able to produce, which can then become a space for more professional level engagement in science communication. So that would be like low stakes beginning. I think that's one way of starting. uh, the other way to also do this, and I think that's because all of this requires a certain kind of training, is to start identifying workshops that people do. Many of these workshops, sometimes they are as small as an hour, they are master classes, sometimes they are as long as, let's say, 1 or 2 week summer schools. To identify such workshops where some kind of intensive training is happening, and maybe shave off some time from your work to go and participate in that workshop, build a network of people, get some skills, but also just connect with other people who are probably exploring similar avenues. See if you can come together and do something, build collaborative networks. I think that changes the game for many people. Science communication can feel like a very isolating exercise when you're in an institute and you're the only one thinking about how to do science communication. So sometimes going to these events, these workshops, sometimes going to festivals, maybe science festivals that are happening in the country, it can just help you connect with more people who are grappling with similar thoughts, and those networks can also become very durable over time. Like I have a lot of friends who I met at either some science festival, or we were starting our careers at the same time, so we were talking a lot on social media, and now that network has remained, and they've become friends, and we exchange notes about our work quite frequently. So so yeah, I think yeah, I would suggest people to start small, start in controlled mentored settings, and constantly focus on the communities that they are able to be a part of, because you can't do this kind of work alone. This is a community endeavor. Yeah.
All right, that sounds amazing. Your journey is so multidimensional, which makes me wonder actually. Heading to the next question, academia can sometimes feel exclusionary, but some small but powerful actions can young people take to make knowledge spaces more inclusive.
Thank you for asking that question. I think there is a lot of evidence that tells us that science practice in India is exclusionary. I mean, we have quite good data of women right from undergrad to, let's say, assistant professor, associate professor, professor levels, and we see that the percentage of women in different stages of this ladder keeps decreasing as you go up the ladder. Um, we know that the percentage of people who are coming from marginalized castes is quite minuscule in the science ecosystem. The kind of data that I have from my work on transgender people in science also shows that at least the number of trans people who are out is very, very small. So clearly, there is some reason why the communities, why the diversity of our society is not reflected in the diversity of our uh, science students and scientists populations. Um, and of course, it's because we have to think about ways to make science practice more diverse. And the reason is, again, we have very, very strong evidence that says the more diverse people come to do science, the quality of science improves, the kind of paradigm shifting, path breaking science that we like to idolize, that kind of science flourishes only when people from different backgrounds, different trainings come together to do science. I think there's a lot of good sociological evidence that points towards that. Uh, so, so I think the way we intervene in questions of exclusion and inclusion is to think at different scales. One scale is, of course, the scale that is top down, right? So one starts thinking about what can the government do? So what are the policies that it can create? What kind of training ecosystems can it build? Um, then the next scale is that of the institution. What can individual institutions do to increase the diversity of practitioners within it? And then we also think about the scale of individual, or what can individuals do to be able to enable diversity. So so, so my first advice to individuals who are looking to be more cautious about exclusion and inclusion is to start questioning internal biases. I think we often do not realize that we hold some biases ourselves. Uh, we might be thinking that, okay, so if somebody is coming from this community, they might be inherently not a good scientist. And I think those biases we need to identify and challenge. There is no idea of being an inherently good scientist, because science is a fundamentally learned practice. Nobody is born into the world trained in how to do science. Everybody gets trained in how to do science. We need to be more mindful of our privileges, right? So, for example, it's very easy for us to say that I am where I am because of my merit. And I am always skeptical of a conversation that brings down a certain achievement to the idea of individual merit, because I don't believe in the question of individual merit. I mean, the fact that that my parents could afford an English education, send me to a decent private school, um, had a role to play in the kind of education that I got in my formative years, which in turn shaped how I performed and how I could participate in my undergrad, postgrad, and whatever I did of my PhD. So clearly, uh, it might be nice to say that, okay, I got into a TIFR by my individual merit, but I know that's not true. There are many factors that made it possible. Uh, so I think reminding ourselves of the fact that we are also a product of our circumstance. It's not just people from marginalized groups that who are product of circumstance, is an important way of remembering that we are not here because of some innate quality that we have. We are here because we were born in a certain, or a certain network of privileges sustained us, and we were able to make it. Which means uh, the time is now to think about how can we utilize this privilege to open the doors for others. I think so. Being mindful of biases and being mindful of privileges is one starting point for individuals to think. Uh, of course, there are other things that one can do, right? I mean, if somebody is making a casteist comment around you, I think one should not keep quiet. One can interject and intervene to the possibility and point out that, okay, that comment that you made was casteist, because I mean, the reason why I'm saying this is because marginalized people are so underrepresented in the science ecosystem that they end up having to take the burden of constantly battling biases, right? So if I am a trans person in science, then I will have to constantly pick up fights with everybody else to justify my existence, to correct their behavior. And I think that can become very emotionally exhausting for individuals, right? If there are very few women in cis women in an institution, for some reason the entire battle becomes theirs, right? So they have to fight for um, I don't know, let's say stuff like creches in the institutions, stuff like better childcare facilities, stuff like more flexible work timings. I mean, the entire fight becomes theirs, right? And I think it should not be a fight for that marginalized people have to fight. I think it should be a fight that everyone should be fighting, because we are not fighting people, we are fighting systems and structures that exclude some of us while enabling others to come in more easily. So if you're somebody who's already made it, who comes with a certain set of privileges, then perhaps you should be also participating in this fight so that the marginalized person, Dalit person, the trans person, the disabled person does not become the person who has to constantly pick up that fight. I think that is an important way. And I understand there are constraints. I mean, we are all battling different powers, right? So if you're a doctoral student, you don't want to pick up a fight with either your supervisor or somebody who's more powerful in the institution. That's completely understandable. But can you interject and intervene when a lab mate is doing or saying something that they shouldn't? Perhaps so we can pick and choose our fight, but I don't think we can totally eliminate ourselves from it.
That was absolutely commendable. You mentioned inclusivity, and I think that's something we all care deeply about. How important is community like collectives or peer networks when building a non traditional academic career?
Thank you. No, I think it is of paramount importance. I think it is the most important thing when one is trying to, foray into what we think is a non-conventional career. I think really, in the absence of pathways to some of these careers, and that is why they are non-conventional, because there are no set pathways to get there. Um, the only people you can rely on is really a community that you are a part of. So these would be the people who would share similar experiences, similar frustrations, and these are the people who you would be relying on for help, for job opportunities, for networking, for finding leads and sources, but also knowing that there is at least another set of people who understands what I'm going through because they are in the same boat as me. um, it makes the effort of choosing a non-conventional career uh, far more non-isolating. I think whenever, I mean, the word non-conventional itself implies that we are in some sense a minority among a larger group, and when we start becoming non-conventional, it can become quite isolating. uh, you're the only person who decided to quit PhD and start a full-time science communication job. um, not many people are doing that, and that can feel very isolating. That can make you self-doubt and self-question many times. So it is important to have a community that will hold you up, that you can tap into for support, professional support, emotional support, all kinds of support, really. So I think, yeah, building communities, collectives, networks, collectives and communities are also very important, because then you don't have to lobby alone. A lot of the work that we do as people with non-conventional careers is we have to constantly lobby for our rights and benefits, and for our for our careers to be recognized as equally legitimate, right? So we don't have um, set, like, so for example, a couple of friends have done this, that they did a survey, and we found that they found that pay scales for science communicators varies vastly across institutions, across the kind of roles that they play. There are no metrics, or no standards for how much science communicators should be paid per hour. For that matter, what counts as the job of a science communicator in an institute is quite a bit in turmoil, because an institute hires one person as a science communicator, and they are supposed to handle everything from the annual report of the institution that goes to the funding agency, to the blog and press releases, and navigating the media terrain. Uh, so if one wants to negotiate some of this with the institution, it is best if they don't have to do it alone. And I think communities and collectives also enable us to negotiate as a group of individuals who've come together because we are facing similar challenges. Um, so yeah, there are many benefits to being part of communities, and I think it is the most important aspect of choosing a non-conventional career in the sciences, that you have to find a community and embed yourself in it, and ensure that you're not doing this alone. I don't think we can do this alone.
Yeah, so that's truly enlightening, and that brings us to the idea of community and the support systems available. And what skills should students begin developing now if they want careers that connect science with the society?
Okay, that is a helpful question, because when one is thinking about skills, I would like to think of a couple of things. One is, um, one needs to inculcate a certain disposition, a certain way of thinking, and a way of being, in if they want to do work that is at the intersections of science and society, or something that's bridging science and society, which is to constantly, when you observe a scientific phenomenon, or a scientific discovery reported in a paper, the idea of asking questions of who did this, why they did this, and the most important question of all, which is why does this matter to non-experts, I think is an important skill that people need to inculcate. People need to yeah, just that way of thinking is something that people need to practice. uh, and but then there is a question of skill that comes with a certain genre or a certain mode of doing science communication. So if you want to be a writer, then I think one would need to practice writing as a skill. If one wants to be a filmmaker, then you would need to learn how to use the camera, how to edit videos, how to film. If one wants to be a theater professional, then you would need to know basics of stage dialogue, casting, stuff like that. So so skills then are, I'm basically saying that there are some skills that are genre or mode agnostic. The idea of thinking about explaining technical concepts to a non-technically trained audience, the idea of asking the why questions. Why does this matter to a certain audience? Why did the scientist choose to do this? uh, that is a way of thinking that one has to inculcate, irrespective of the kind of field, or the kind of modality that one wants to work with. But Then there are very mode specific, genre specific skills that one needs to train themselves in. So I would suggest that you identify first the mode that you are comfortable with, that you want to pursue. Is it science art? Is it science, I don't know, theater? Is it science writing? And then, the skills that you need to learn start getting narrowed down. Like if you want to be a science writer, you want to keep practicing. um, how do you summarize scientific discoveries and explain scientific discoveries in a language that does not rely upon jargon? How do you tell scientific discoveries not just as a collection of experiments and findings, but how do you build a story that conveys the scientific discovery? Who are the characters in the story? What are the characters doing? Basically, practicing the skill of narrative, I think those become important if you want to be a science writer. Um, can you start figuring out history of ideas, where what stimulated this idea and where this idea will lead the world? Can you think in terms of chronology and history as you think about scientific ideas? Those become very important, I think, for a science writer, um, if they want to take up science writing professionally. So the exact skills would vary, but I think one way to start is to identify the genre that one wants to start working, embed yourself in a community that does that work, and start picking some of these skills yourself. Um, and then there are genre agnostic skills that I was talking about, the disposition of thinking like a science communicator, the disposition of thinking like somebody who does not believe science and society are disconnected, uh, is something that we all can start building anyway, irrespective of whether we want to be science communicators or not. Yeah.
So I think that's absolutely in alignment with the questions that have been asked. And so for student listening to this and feeling inspired, I think that's absolutely amazing. And finally, I think we will now give open stage to our audience. So this is your time. Please go ahead and share your questions and answers.
Yeah.
Somalia, is there anyone who wants to basically, any audience who wants to have any questions and answers with sir?
I don't have, but I have one question. So the current problem in the India is that the students are not able to think very practically and they don't have the critical thinking skills. So as a science journalist, what advice should you give through our channel that the students should start critical thinking?
Okay, I think I think the reason behind what you're saying is that we are taught how to think critically within domains. So, for example, if you're training to be a neuroscientist, you would be trained to pick up a paper from some journal and tear it apart, so to say, point out the flaws, point out what researchers could have done better. So that critical thinking they are taught, but they are not taught critical thinking that is outside the domain, right? Asking questions like, okay, uh, what are the social, cultural, political factors that enable certain science to become important versus certain science to not become important? Why is it that we see people of certain genders and certain castes and certain abilities in science institutions, and we don't see them, and we don't see others as frequently? Why are many technology institutes, why is the rate of suicide in student suicides in these institutes so high? Those are the kind of questions that I think people are more uncomfortable asking, and those are the kind of questions that one would learn to have to ask uh, as a science journalist specifically. uh, and I think, yeah, the way to practice thinking those questions and to not think of science practice as a domain that is self-contained and independent from the larger society. So, so really thinking about science practice as something that reflects and in sometimes even exacerbates social biases, discriminations, um, the forces that divide us, those actually get exacerbated sometimes in science institutes. And I think learning to pay attention to the social, the cultural, and the political, and how they shape science is very important in the journey of being a science journalist. I think that one has to think about more critically. um, Part of the worry is that in India, scientists and science students are often kept separate, kept insulated from politics. You think about student politics, we always think of humanities and social science students who are going to go and do sloganeering. And for some reason, that makes them, we think of them as less serious people. So, this kind of political insulation is one of the problems that I think affects critical thinking among science students. The problem is that this political insulation doesn't exist, right? There are policies that are defining what kind of science that we do. There is a government that decides what kind of science is going to get funded. And in the US, we are already seeing, the impact of a government that is uh, not very interested in progressive science. In terms of the fund cuts that many of the national agencies and individual scientists are witnessing. So we need to be able to start creating more political scientists, I think, and I mean not people who do political science, but scientists who are more political in the country. And I think that's a project that we've not done enough. We need to do that.
What I feel, what is the problem in India is that the students are not trained to make their own questions. That training is very required in India. Then only they will be able to critically think their subjects, what they are learning from their teachers. So making questions is an also an important skill. Asking good questions is also an important skill.
No, absolutely. I completely agree. I completely agree. And I think, many people have said this before me. This is not my suggestion alone. But I think what we need to inculcate is more inter-domain thinking, right? The ability to build connections between different domains. And I think in order to inculcate that, many people have suggested that all science students be exposed to some amount of humanities and social sciences work. Um, I teach in a liberal arts university where some of this work is already done. All students who enter Clear University in the first year, irrespective of what majors they will eventually choose, they have to go through some training in data analytics, scientific reasoning, mathematical reasoning, but also in exploring the social and the historical and other courses from humanity, literature and the arts, ethics. So similar questions from disciplines from, so basically a set of courses from all disciplines that can expose them to the different ways in which multiple disciplines think about the same topic. Uh, and I think that kind of training needs to become more commonplace in India. I think there is some merit in stepping outside the discipline as we build critical thinking. Critical thinking cannot emerge if we remain very staid in our disciplines. Yeah, I hope that answers your question.
I think, yeah, so this was really wonderful. Somilia, are you comfortable allowing me to head towards the next session of our podcast?
There, that is just since and then means you work on the pedagogy approach, that is the learning by doing. So maybe can we discuss some collaborative kind of venture that we can work together and we can promote the message of pedagogy approach in India?
Sure, happy to discuss. Do you have any ideas in mind? Are we still on the podcast or has that?
Some ideas I have, which I will maybe discuss, and I will make a formulate PPT. Then I will discuss with you through Satya.
Sure. I just want to say that even if we don't have PPTs and all, that's totally fine. I'm also happy to get on a call and just
Yeah,
brainstorm and discuss ideas. I mean, I'm a very collaborative person, and I would love to see what we can do. In fact, I've been thinking of putting together some kind of a SciComm hub, uh, which we don't have right now in the country. And I'm talking to people about it. So let's talk. Yeah, it would be great fun to do this.
can have a separate kind of meeting for this.
Okay. Sorry, my cat is just eating attention hungry. Yes.
That's
Yes,
cat.
separate meeting sounds great. Yeah.
Schrodinger's cat it is.
Yeah. This one though is very. I mean, she's a very camera-friendly cat. She gets kind of. She loves to be on the camera when I'm on a call, which is why she starts seeking attention when I'm talking. You know.
Okay.
Okay,
Then
so yeah, yes, Amelia. Shall I proceed to the next session, please? I mean the next part of the session.
yes. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So this was actually truly enlightening, Sanatan Dutta. So it was really fantastic. Your perspective on science as storytelling have truly expanded the way we think about science, not just as a subject, but as a powerful medium to connect, question, and create impact. The way you seamlessly brought together academia, identity, and communication has been incredibly inspiring and amazing for all of us. I'm pretty much sure that the here is taking back not just knowledge but also the confidence to explore their unique paths and embrace multiple passions, but without hesitation. On behalf of SciComm Synapse, I would really like to express our heartfelt gratitude to you for taking out the time to share your journey, your experiences, and your wisdom with us. To all the wonderful audience, a big thank you for being so engaged and bringing such great energy to the conversation. And with that, we wrap up today's episode of the next experiment. Thank you, everyone. Stay curious, stay inspired, and keep exploring. We would really appreciate if all of you can take a moment to really share your feedback for our next event to make it better and energized one. And there's a link of feedback form in the comments to receive e-certificate. You'll be given the e-certificate only if you fill in the feedback forms. So until then, please like, share, and subscribe on our YouTube channel. For more information, do visit www.thescicommsynapse.in. Thank you all.
Thank you. Okay, I can leave. Can I leave?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. Thank you so much for
Thank,
making part of this, folks. Yeah.
thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming. Take care. See
Thank
you.
you. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Good day. Bye.